if you believe the 9/11 Commission report isn't neocon propaganda, and you read it, you'll see that one of the big criticisms of the U.S. government was that they completely neglected Afghanistan in the 1990s. And they did this during the Clinton era, they did this during Republican and Democratic institutions. And, if they really wanted to build this railway, they wanted to build this pipeline, it would have been the easiest thing in the world to do.
Let me take the man. I know Mr. Tarpley has something to say, but let me take the man in blue, and you can build your answer onto, because he's been very patient.
Sure.
Hi. Questions for Mr. Kaye. How do you explain Operation Northwoods, which wasn't declassified until spring 2001 by James Bamford?
Yeah.
That's the first question. Second question, how do you explain Alex Jones in July 2001 launching Operation Expose Government Terror and predicting that that the government was going to stage attacks in New York City and Washington and blame it on Osama bin Laden? And third question also. I got one more question. How many articles have you done about the Bilderberg Group and its agenda? Thank you.
Okay. Yes, I've been deficient in my coverage of the Bilderberg Group's evil agenda, but I do talk about it in the book. I also in terms of Alex Jones. It's actually quite true, and I mentioned this in my book. It's quite true that on Alex Jones's syndicated radio show, before the 9/11 attacks, who I interviewed for my book, Alex Jones did tell people that there was going to be an attack on the United States. I think he might have mentioned New York, he didn't mention the World Trade Center, and that it was going to be used as a pretext to launch wars of conquest abroad. The problem with that is that Alex Jones does that about 17 times every day. Alex Jones runs a completely paranoid radio show, and I think, I don't know if Mr. Tarpley would agree with me,
I'm a frequent guest, and I have to stick up for Alex Jones. I don't think this is fair.
Now, in terms of Northwoods, in terms of Operation Northwoods, just so everybody in the room knows, Northwoods is a completely real historical phenomenon. It was basically the Joint Chiefs of Staff came to JFK and they said, hey, we've got this great operation we've designed. It's a pretext to attack Castro. What we're going to do is, well, there are a few variations, but basically they were going to shoot down a plane near Cuban airspace, blame it on the Cubans, and then invade Cuba. It's your classic false flag operation. Classic false flag operation, and JFK basically said to them, are you guys nuts? This is stupid, and it'll be disclosed immediately. It's the dumbest thing in the world, and he sent them packing, which is exactly what any president would do when presented with that kind of operation. In an open society where the president realizes that these things are disclosed. It wouldn't happen in Nazi Germany, it wouldn't happen in Syria, because their leaders have a monopoly on information flow. United States.
Could I?
All right, Mr. Tarpley has
just on Northwoods, a couple of things on Northwoods. The Bush-Blair conversation of January 2003, where Bush says, we should paint an airplane with United Nations colors, send it over Iraq, Saddam will shoot it down, and there we have our casus belli. That's number one. The second one with Northwoods is the guy who signed it, General Lyman Lemnitzer, went on to Europe and, as far as I can see, founded Gladio, the stay-behind operation from which so many terrorist groups have then spawned. And the other thing, of course, is that Northwoods really was carried out. The Gulf of Tonkin incident is a variation on the theme of Northwoods, so I wouldn't be too complacent about that. Bush, of course, supported the Taliban. He gave a payment of $65 million to the Taliban to pay their entire payroll for the first half of 2001. Taliban were ideal because they kept everybody out. They hated the Iranians, hated the Russians, hated the Chinese. They hated everybody. It was perfect. But could I propose to maybe change gears? I fear we're not doing justice to the other side of Mr. Kaye's argument, which is his concern is, why do people not believe in institutions, right? Why is it that the official doctrine of so many institutions is falling flat? Why are all these institutions discredited, for want of a better word? Why are hegemonic institutions no longer hegemonic? In a democracy, we deal in something called eudimonic legitimation, right? If for a democratic government like ours, should be, you've got to deliver the goods. It means economic progress. You've got to deliver jobs. You've got to deliver rising standards of living, full employment. The record that we have over 40 years is a decline of 2/3 in the standard of living. The other thing we've got are these endless wars, meaningless wars that don't enjoy popular support. They're predicated on political assassinations with Kennedy and or false flag events. And I would suggest that we ought to look at the broader reality around just this narrow conspiracy yes or no theme. Look at the discrediting of the institutions by their own behavior and what might be the remedy. And I have to tell you, my political agitation goes in the direction of the New Deal, of the policies of Franklin D. Roosevelt, of a return to policies that have served us well in the past, turning away from the extreme Austrian libertarian views of a Ron Paul, turning away from the Keynesian methods that have failed us, turning away from the Malthusian methods of the radical ecologists who dominate so much of the Democratic Party. In other words, the reason people don't believe government, they don't believe medicine, the academy, all of these institutions are failing. They don't deliver the goods. They're lacking in legitimation because they don't deliver what people expect. And I would suggest that rather than trying to repress opinion, right, with curriculum reforms or other things, let's look at the broader picture in society and what can actually be done there, because it seems to me that's where progress could be made.
You know, can I ask? That's a very interesting point, and I wonder if I could ask for another show of hands. How many people? No. I'm curious. No, I'm sorry. Let's push back the frontiers of human ignorance here. There's something I'd like to know. How many people are there here in this room?
Don't answer it.
You don't have to answer. It's not compulsory. But I'm just curious. How many people are there in this room who, in some way or another, doubt official modern medicine and use alternative methods of? No, sorry, Dr. Tapley just raised that question himself. How many people, for example, use herbal methods or other kinds of informal treating? So, about half. About half. That's interesting. That's interesting. All right. Yes, in the mid row, the lady.
Yeah, Jonathan, I'm sure in your research for your book, you did a thorough analysis of all of the evidence proving that 9/11 is an inside job and found it wanting. I'm curious if you were put in a position to have to argue for that side, what do you consider to be the most compelling evidence that 9/11 was an inside job, and why do you find it wanting?
That's a good question. I actually became quite fascinated with the technical side of the accusations about 9/11 being an inside job. In a former life, I was a metallurgical engineer. I have a master's degree in metallurgical engineering, specializing in thermodynamics. As a result, I became extremely intrigued by the technical aspects of the arguments about how the columns and the girders fell in WTC 1 and 2 and 7. I read the NIST reports with interest. And that side of the debate actually was quite fascinating. Even before I became interested in conspiracy theories, my background in metallurgical engineering gave me a pronounced interest in that. In terms of the actual evidence that 9/11 was an inside job, because I ascribe, I believe in the conventional account of 9/11, that it was the work of Al-Qaeda, I don't see any of it as particularly compelling. The one piece of evidence that I've always seen as useful from a propaganda point of view for 9/11 conspiracy theorists is the video of WTC 7 falling at 5:20 p.m. on 9/11. And that is because the video clip they show always is very carefully selected to show the undamaged side of the building, so that people seeing it will think that, oh, that resembles controlled demolition. When you see the other side of the building, you see the uncontrolled fires that were raging for 8 hours, you become much more skeptical. So from a propaganda point of view, I think that the carefully selected footage of WTC-7's collapse is useful to the conspiracy theorists, but is in no way convincing to anybody who actually delves into it.